Great to be joined by the 2020 Westgate Super Contest champion, David Baker. And if he looks a little bit familiar, for those of you guys watching on vsin.com, he is the man that you see on so many just final tables of like the WPT. List goes on. And David, it's always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. Always enjoy our Sunday conversations.
I always do as well. And I mean, it was a great week 17 in the NFL, and one that was very fascinating in the NFC. The biggest one is that the Green Bay Packers, they might be able to run the table after all. They're one win away from being able to do so. They take down the Minnesota Vikings, and maybe I'm just being a little bit of a hater here, but with the Green Bay Packers, it was less that I was not impressed by them, but this was just a really bad game by Kirk Cousins, because the Packers' first 2 touchdowns, I mean, the offense really didn't take the field at all. They were able to have an interception return, and then they had a kickoff return. I'm not sure about you, but it was just really a bad game from Kirk Cousins, and really the first one that we've seen from him all year.
Yeah, I know that you've been anti-Packers here for the last several weeks, and basically the whole season. I know it's your hometown team, but they're kind of gelling at the right time. I mean, none of their wins have been super impressive, but they're getting the W's. And I mean, I don't even know really what you can take away from this game on either side. I mean, look, if you're in the camp of the Packers are back, then it's an easy sell. If you're in the camp that the Vikings, have been overrated this whole year and they're not that good, then, this is a perfect confirmation bias from. But I mean, the reality is that, when they took that kickoff return back for the touchdown, first of all, the Vikings didn't score first and goal from the 1. I think that a little bit goes on O'Connell. He ran some trick pass, not really trick, but just a pass play on first down. I think you just got to give it to Dalvin there. And then once you miss on first down, it's obvious it's going to go to Dalvin. So they kind of stacked that. They stopped it. Then they ran the kickoff back for a touchdown. Then there was a tip pass that got returned for a touchdown. And then this wasn't like the Colts or somebody like that the Vikings could rally against. I mean, this is a good quality team. So I think they just put a little bit too much pressure, and the game got away from them. And that's the thing. Like, people want to criticize the Vikings because they're point differential, but I mean, it's really just a couple of games that they were up against quality opponents and they got behind, and it just kind of snowballed. And obviously that's kind of telling that they got blown out by 3 good teams, but it is also a little bit of misleading because they have been so good in the clutch time.
Yep, I do think that it can be a little bit of both. And when you go 11-0 in one-score games, that does say something as well. And I think that we've got to give a little bit of kudos to Kevin O'Connell, because to get a team to be able to go 11-0 in one-score games, that really does say something. And it does say something as well about the mettle of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what they were able to do today as well, because first half did not go their way. And legitimately the first, we're going to call it 3 or so quarters, it looked like it was going to be a rough one for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but late, Tom Brady was able to find Mike Evans. They're able to sew up the division. What do you make out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team? Because, I mean, I'll be honest here, I don't necessarily think too highly of them, but we've seen it time and time again, these teams that they're right around 500, perhaps they're a game below 500. When they get these home playoff games, they come out and they're very, very fierce, and typically, more often than not, they've been able to get the job done and win at least one game in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, here's another one. Just insert storyline to your narrative. Either Tom Brady's the greatest of all time, which, I mean, I think he clearly is, and that's the reason why they keep coming back, or Tom Brady's the luckiest quarterback of all time. I mean, I hear them both. The reality is this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team has a lot of talent, but they're not very good. They haven't been very good all year. It took a lot of things to go right for them to beat a middling team at home in this Carolina Panthers team. And I'm just kind of hoping, as somebody who doesn't really believe in this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team in its current, whatever
Form.
you want to call it, in the current team and roster and coaches and everything, I don't really believe in them. So I'm hoping maybe this win, and if they win next week, not that it's a game they have to play or anything, but maybe the line will be a little bit lower when Dallas comes to visit them next week or in 2 weeks in the wild card round, because I think the Cowboys are a far superior team than them, and that's assuming that Philly gets the job done next week as well. Obviously, Philly could be the team that goes there, but let's just assume for this conversation that it's Dallas. I think Dallas is not going to fall for um, this offensive game plan they have. They just cannot run the football, and if you're in pin your ears back and come after Brady with Parsons, I think it's going to be a tough ask for the Bucks.
And you just mentioned it, the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles now they do have to win Week 18 in order to sew up that number one seed. They could still get it even if they lose, but they would need things to break just right, including the San Francisco 49ers to lose as nearly a 2-touchdown favorite against the Arizona Cardinals, which that's asking for a whole heck of a lot there. But what did you make out of the Eagles' performance on Sunday? Because I think it's very clear just what Jalen Hurts does mean to this team, because I think that a lot of us were questioning, oh, is it Jalen Hurts? Is it everyone else? And no question about it, the weapons that Jalen Hurts does have is very good, but I also think that we're now seeing just how much Jalen Hurts has been able to maximize his performance with those as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I feel very clear about is that Jalen Hurts is the MVP this year. And when he got hurt, his number skyrocketed up to I think like 5-1, and I think it's been creeping back a little bit close to even with Mahomes. But I'm not really sure Mahomes has done that much to solidify it in Jalen's absence. I mean, he's gone down to the last possession against Denver and Houston in the last 3 weeks. So I don't really think that. I think it's pretty clear right now that this team's going to go as far as Jalen takes them. And he was leading them on a historic performance, and them losing 2 games when he went out. If he comes back and finishes the deal next week against the Giants, then I mean, I think it's an open and shut case as far as I'm concerned. Um, the Eagles should get the job done against the Giants. I'm going to assume that the Giants are going to rest Barkley and Jones and maybe some of the other key players on the team, but you never really know what coaches are going to do. Maybe Dable wants, to test them or something. I think it would be really silly if he went out and played them against a hard-nosed team like the Eagles. I mean, this is a type of team that's going to beat you up for 4 quarters. So I think this should be a throwaway game for the Giants, and the Eagles should get the job done. But it's the NFL, and you just never know what's going to happen in these games. I mean, anything can happen. So as somebody who really needs the Eagles to win that game, I'm hoping that Dable does the smart thing and puts the starters on the bench.
Yep, and we've seen just two different philosophies with that. Going to the AFC, we saw the Tennessee Titans on Thursday Night Football. They rested Derrick Henry. They rested darn near everyone on that defense. Meanwhile, the Jags, they did the exact opposite against the Houston Texans. They throttled them 31-3, and I thought it was the right move by the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got out of there relatively unscathed in terms of injuries, and they built a lot of momentum moving forward against a Titans team now that it's win to get in for both of them in Week 18.
Yeah, I didn't really understand the whole thing all week with people saying Jacksonville was going to sit their players. I thought for sure they would play their players. Um, when you're looking at percentages to make the playoffs, only a small percentage was derived from getting that wild card spot. But that was just because so many scenarios had them winning next week against Tennessee. And look, this is a divisional game. These teams are familiar with each other. And, I know Tennessee hasn't been very good lately and Jacksonville's been good, but there is no guarantee that Jacksonville is going to beat this Tennessee team. Vrabel has seen Lawrence and these Jags many times, and the Jags have had trouble stopping Henry, even though they kind of did this year when they beat him up in Tennessee. But I thought Jacksonville made the correct call. They played their guys. Plus, it's a young team, still gelling. They're finding their groove. And, even if you do win this game against Tennessee, you go in, on a hot streak. And, I thought Tennessee probably should have played their guys too. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they needed to get some momentum heading into this game because they've been downright terrible for the last month and a half.
Well, the good news is Joshua Dobbs certainly looks a whole heck of a lot better than Malik Willis at the current
For
moment.
sure.
So that's, I guess, a little bit encouraging for the Tennessee Titans. But we've got another big game that's going to be going out there in the AFC, and it's Week 17. We're going to be previewing next with David Baker, what we're going to be finding in Bills versus Bengals on Monday Night Football here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We're back here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Great to be rejoined by David Baker, the 2020 Westgate SuperContest champion, and a man that you've seen on quite a few poker broadcasts. He does a great job on that front as well. And David, typically when it comes to our chats, we're mostly just recapping what we saw from Week 17 because the Monday Night Football game, typically it's a dud involving not so great teams. Well, this week it's the exact opposite, as there was one game this week involving two teams that entered into the week with a record above 500, and that's what we're getting here with the Bills and the Bengals. The Bengals are a 1-point home underdog with your total 49.5. Where do you stand with this game? Because I just take a look at both of these teams. They both seem to be firing all cylinders. It feels like post-Thanksgiving, the Bills have been able to get back sort of to that full form. I don't know if they're fully 100% there, but they've been looking better. Meanwhile, you've got a Bengals team that ever since their first two losses of the season, they've been firing all cylinders as well, and this just sets up to be an amazing game in general.
Yeah, these two teams are pretty much my two favorite teams in the NFL as far as that I enjoy watching and that I think are the best teams. I think the Bengals are playing the best football this moment, and I think the Bills have the highest ceiling. I think they're the best team in the NFL, but I don't think they've been playing quite as well as the Bengals. How that translates to a game versus each other, I don't really know. I like to have strong opinions on games, and it kind of bothers me that I'm having trouble forming one on this game. I really think this is just basically going to be which great quarterback has the ball last. I mean, it's going to be a great game, and I think there's going to be some offense in this game, and yeah, I think the Bengals are playing the best right now, and they're home. They have home field advantage, so I think there's small value in the Bengals. I mean, this line is basically telling me that the Bills are 4-point better on neutral fields. I think that's a little disrespectful to the Bengals, but to be fair, the lines have been disrespectful for the Bengals all year. That's kind of why I think they're on a 20-3 against the spread run. So when a team is running that far above 500 against the spread, then that basically just means that they're not really respected in the markets. Because if they were respected, then they would be getting steamed, and more people would be betting on them. I think the Bengals are the right side in this game just because of that point, but it's really not going to surprise me either way how this game goes. I would kind of lean towards the over 49.5. I think both these quarterbacks can get it done in different ways. They're both pass heavy teams. So when you have two pass heavy teams, either the ball gets completed for chunk yards or it's incomplete, so you should get more plays. Unlike the game we watched tonight with the Ravens and the Steelers, the clock was always moving because both teams were running it and didn't want to put it up.
Yep, and that's part of the reason why you see higher scores in college football as well, with teams that run like the air raid offense. Certainly, them stopping the clock to move the chains, that helps out in college as well. But I do think, to your point, that is something to take note of. And in terms of this game, do you think that it's actually to the Bengals' advantage that, in my opinion, they've got a little bit of the better ground game? Josh Allen, he does a great job with his feet, but the better halfback in this game, in my opinion, is Joe Mixon, and I think that gives the Bengals a little bit of an edge and gives them just a little bit more of a dimension than it does for the Buffalo Bills in this game.
It does, but the Bengals' success of late, and their run to the Super Bowl, it all hinges on the arm of Joe Burrow, and Chase and T. Higgins winning those 50-50 balls. That Burrow does give his receivers chances to win, and sometimes it bites him, but for the most part, he's got a superior cast of weapons on the outside. Also, that's really how you attack this Buffalo team. Their secondary is their weakness. They're stronger up front. So I don't really expect the Bengals to commit too much to the run game. I think this is just going to be, the Bengals throwing the ball to their talented receivers and the Bills just mixing a lot of Diggs with a little bit of Knox, McKenzie, and a lot of Josh Allen running. I mean, really, I just hope that we get the clean game and everybody comes out of this game healthy, because these two teams I want to see in the playoffs at full strength.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, and I do think that this game is just so meaningful because, as we know, with the Bengals, they do need to win to be able to just sew up the division in general. They could find themselves in a little bit of a wild card scenario. They were certainly helped out by the Baltimore Ravens losing on Sunday Night Football, but still, the Bengals, they need to notch one more win to be able to shore that up. And in terms of these two teams, they're, in my opinion, are going to be there when it comes to the end of things. But that said, another team I think is going to be there, and a team that they have already sewn up the division, and they're going to be getting one of those top two seeds. That would be the Kansas City Chiefs. They were able to get it done, but did not look impressive against the Denver Broncos. Now, not much money to be made on the Denver Broncos the rest of the year. They've got only one game, and I do think that it was telling that after Nathaniel Hackett got fired, hey, guess what? Guys were able to compete a little bit more, but I think that it just continues to be the theme. With the Kansas City Chiefs, they do just enough to win, and they continue to play up or down to the competition. I'm not sure how you felt about this game, but that was really my biggest overall takeaway.
Well, the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that, I really didn't love coming in. I really had the Bengals and the Bills and the Chargers, honestly, ahead of them coming in. But, they got things rolling early, and they proved that they were a top one or two team in the league. But these last several weeks, they've sleptwalked through Houston, almost lost, sleptwalked through Denver, almost lost. I mean, look, you should be able to roll it out versus the Texans and Broncos and win by double digits. I don't know if this is telling at all. I mean, I know we've seen sleepy regular season Chiefs for years now, and that they can just turn it on. But man, they cannot sleepwalk through this AFC playoff run. I mean, there's a reasonable chance that they're probably going to get the easy team in round one, which is going to be either the Dolphins, Patriots, or Steelers. No disrespect to those teams. I mean, they're okay, but they're not in the class of the rest of the other six AFC teams. So they're probably going to get an easy game there. But that the second and third round game, when they're going against teams like the Bengals, the Bills, the Chargers, I don't know. I personally have the Chiefs below those other two. I'm looking to short the Chiefs in the AFC personally, but we'll see. They still have the most experienced and best coach, and the most experienced and maybe best quarterback. So, I'm not in love with what the Chiefs have been showing me lately, but can't count them out for sure.
No, you can never count out the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, but I'm glad that you brought up the Chargers as well, because I think I was talking about this perhaps being a little bit of a buy low spot on the Chargers with the number going below a touchdown after we saw the Rams go out for 50 points. I think we were both in agreement that the Rams were not going to duplicate that on offense, and I recognize that the Rams, they were dealing with all sorts of injuries, but I really like the way that this Chargers team is coming along, and they're a team that I think if you're looking outside the big three in the AFC, they could do a little bit of damage.
Yeah, last week we talked about and put out there that I loved the Chargers on Monday night, and that I was going to love them for the Rams, and I like this team. They're getting healthy at the right time. They're gelling. They have the receivers. They have the best running back or one of the best running backs in football right now. Bosa's back. Van Noy. I think Khalil Mack's back, and I think this team really is going to present problems in the AFC. So I think it's kind of important they win this last game just so they can match up against Jacksonville or Tennessee. Not that Jacksonville's would be a walkover for them. I think it'd probably be close to a point flip game in the spread. But I think you want to stay away from having to play one of the big three in the first round, and the only way you can kind of do that is by getting the 5 seed.
I
So
agree.
I think the Chargers need to go out and try to win this game versus the Broncos.
I agree. And if they do face off against the Jacksonville Jaguars, as we know, big revenge spot for them. They got blown out in LA the last time these two teams met. So that is something to take a look at. And coming up next, we are going to be taking a look at some of these Week 18 games with David Baker and how to play those as well. That's up next here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Great to be rejoined by David Baker, the 2020 Westgate SuperContest champion. And David, I think that it's going to be really interesting to take a look at this week in the NFL. And a good pro tip, vsin.com/subscribe for all of these. Might want to hold off on betting some of these games until we know exactly what the schedule is going to be and how some of these games might be playing out. If you're looking at a Sunday game, you might want to take a look at the Saturday games because the Saturday games are likely going to have impact as to how these Sunday games are going to be going, whether it's going to be a meaningful game or not with these teams, because there's a lot of playoff implications for a lot of these games. But we know that this one is going to have big playoff implications regardless of where it's going to be. That'd be the Packers and the Lions. Right now, in a lot of spots, I'm seeing the Packers as about a 4.5-point favorite. I'm seeing a stray 4 out here where I sit at circa. But where do you stand on this game? Because the last time these two teams met up, the Lions were really struggling. They got that big win with Aaron Rodgers uncharacteristically throwing 3 interceptions within the 30-yard line. And I'm sure that he has not forgotten about that performance.
Yeah, and again, we're going to have Jared Goff outside in cold temperatures. That is not traditionally where he has thrived. He's downright struggled in those scenarios. And there is that outside chance that NBC flexes this game to the night. And if that's the case, if Seattle wins, then it makes Detroit a little not have anything to play for. Being that it's Dan Campbell and his guys, I assume that they will give full effort anyway. But if they do set this game up at night, and you do think that that Seattle can win, that Seattle's going to win, I think you might want to take an early number on the Packers, because if they do, that number is gonna just do nothing but go up. So yeah, I think you can get some. You do want to kind of wait and see what happens. But if you want to try to get the best line, you can kind of forecast what you think is going to happen in some of the earlier games, and you might be able to get a line that might react based on the movement, and you might be able to get a good line. But as for this particular matchup, I mean, my early lean would be Green Bay, just because how Detroit has struggled outside. And look, if there's anybody who understands about playoff pressure, it's the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, even though he has traditionally failed in the playoffs. But yeah, I do kind of trust them more than I do Goff and the Lions.
Yeah, but I take a look at this matchup, and once again, the playoff implications are going to vary a little bit with this one, but the Cleveland Browns on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and with the Steelers, I'm sure that a lot of books have this off the board because the Steelers, they just won in that Sunday night game, but look at line, it began at 1, it's been seamed up to between 2 and 2.5, and with the Steelers, they're a team that I can absolutely bank on for having motivation. Whether or not they've got big playoff implications or not, you know that these guys are going to fight hard for Mike Tomlin. I am sure that every player in that locker room is aware that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record, and they don't want to be the first guys to deliver that. And it's a Cleveland Browns team that, yeah, they were able to knock off the Washington Commanders, but in my opinion, one of the most brain-dead decisions all year long was starting Carson Wentz in that game for Washington. That made no sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is a two-prong question or discussion. Let's first get this Washington thing off my chest, because that was my biggest bet of the day, was Washington. Not because, I mean, I've been a Carson Wentz hater since day one, but I really felt that if anybody had the pulse of their locker room, it would be Ron Rivera. And I thought that if he made that decision, that he knew that this was the right decision. And it was obviously the wrong decision. Carson Wentz is terrible. I don't know why I gave into the fact that he was making a good decision here. And yeah, very disappointing. You got to be able to beat this Cleveland Browns team with the playoffs on the line. I mean, this Browns team is not good at all. And that leads right into the Steelers. The Steelers team, it was a year ago that we were all rooting against the Steelers to get in the playoffs because they were just a dead team that had no shot. Right now, they're the most fun team that has a chance at that 7 seed. I don't think there's any hope for any of the other teams in contention. So I kind of hope the Steelers make it.
Yep, and with the Miami Dolphins, they're really the only other team in contention, along with the Patriots, who currently hold that number 7 spot. So that's going to be really interesting because the Jets, they had their season pretty much come to an end at the hands of the Seattle Seahawks. So that means that those implications are out the window. And that does lead into the fact that you've got the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Packers all duking it out. And I mean, with the Seattle Seahawks, they're a very fascinating team in and of themselves because prior to the win that they were able to pull off on Sunday, this team was really going down the toilet bowl themselves. They've got absolutely everything on the line on Saturday and or Sunday, depending upon what we're going to be seeing in terms of that game as well. So I take a look at the Seattle Seahawks, and they're a team that's really worth watching for, as well as right now we're seeing their line against the LA Rams being right around 6.5, and it's a Rams team that has been so inconsistent with them, but I feel like this is once again a spot where you're able to get good value because the market really reacted after that Baker Mayfield comeback against the Las Vegas Raiders. They reacted well after they put up 51 points against the Broncos, but I think that both of those scenarios were fool's gold, and this is still a Rams team dealing with a quarterback that got there less than a month ago and has a whole bunch of players that are just generally injured.
Yeah, I mean, I've continuously said this week after week that I think this Rams team is complete trash. Um, yeah, I don't want any part of this Rams team. The the Seahawks, I gotta hand it to them. I mean, it looked like they were left for dead, and they showed up today against a tough-nosed defense, and they got the job done. I think that it was a pretty popular play across the board on the Jets. So yeah, the Seahawks showed me something, and I don't think they'll take the Rams for granted because they went into LA as an 8-point favorite a couple weeks ago, and they had to score at the very end of the game um, just to win. So I think they're going to give it full effort, and there's a reasonable chance that the Lions beat the Packers. So I mean, they have everything right in front of them. So even though I think the Packers will win, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if the Lions did. So, I mean, I think Seattle's got to go out there and give it everything they have for sure.
Oh, no question about it. And I'm sure that this team is going to give it everything that they've got, regardless, too, as it's going to be the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets that do battle. The Jets, they are now eliminated from the playoffs, but got to feel like this is going to be a team that's going to be playing for pride. And for the Miami Dolphins, currently they're a 3-point home favorite. What do you make out of this matchup? Because for the Miami Dolphins, they absolutely need to win this game to be able to keep their playoff hopes alive. Meanwhile, for the Jets, they just got eliminated, but you could tell that under Mike White, they've just been a completely different team than when they had Zach Wilson under center.
I mean, this game to me just all comes down to the quarterback. I mean, who's the starting quarterback for the Dolphins? If it's Skylar Thompson, I don't want any part of it. I mean, he's looked awful in the 2 games that I've watched him play. And um, I mean, as much as I don't think Tua's elite, he's still him and Teddy are both capable, and they put the ball in their receivers' hands and let them do the work. And McDaniel's been good at drawing up plans to get the weapons the ball. So if we can get one of those 2 quarterbacks, then yeah, I would probably lean towards the Dolphins. If not, I have no part of wanting to lay points with Skylar Thompson.
Yep,
or whatever his name is.
Yep, it's Skylar Thompson, pick number 247 in this year's NFL draft. I will say that, saying that Brock Purdy was picked a few picks behind him, and we've seen him be able to do a solid job. And with the 49ers, they absolutely need to win to be able to keep their hopes of a 1 seed alive. Would you be willing to lay 13.5 with them against the Arizona Cardinals, though?
Yeah, I mean, I assume we're going to get, one of these terrible Arizona quarterbacks again. So, yeah, I mean, I mistakenly laid 10 today versus the Raiders. So I'm sure I'd be happy to lay the number then I mean, even if they don't get the 1 seed, they still want to win the two. They still got to get the 2 seed to have Minnesota visit them in round two. If it becomes a battle of those two teams. So I think San Francisco will give it everything they have.
Yep, and keep in mind the pro tip, take a look at the scheduling with these Week 18 games because the motivation / lack thereof, it is going to be varying based on how the schedule shakes out, but something that we know how it's going to shake out. Great information week in and week out from David Baker. Always appreciate him joining the Greg Peterson Experience.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.